Morning. Strongest quarter ever, Soundhound. Good for them. Thank you, Raul. What do I think of AMPX? Decent response to its earnings last night. Moves 9% per day. It's just, if you're going to go buy this thing at, 850, you're buying it about 60% away from the 50 simple moving average. A little bit extended, man. That's all. And also, have you noticed anything going on with recent earnings winners? Just to I talked about it in last night's watch list video. You've been noticing anything for like the last 3 weeks? Oh, yeah. Hey, you're the second person that says something. Yeah, we finally got a new mic, man. I had to make it happen. Somebody told me my last one sucked, and I agreed after listening to a few of the videos that were out there, because I don't really listen. I just post them. I don't really listen to the videos that I post. I just post them. And somebody said last night that the video was way better. So cool. I'm glad you think so. But yeah, have you noticed anything with earnings winners recently? Well, of course, WPM was going to have a good report. The thing that they dig out of the ground is flying and just trying to break out. Almost a new all-time high at the moment. Yeah, we've had a lot of names, and starting with, I talked about it in last night's watch list video. You start with like an NOW, right, where you get this little gap up, and then instantly selling off, and then now this should kind of be a red flag to you guys, just a little bit. You get the push, gap down. This one just consolidated on the lower end of that gap down, and then roll over. Right? I'm not saying all of them are going to do that, but you've been kind of then noticing it with others too. Either it be a SoFi where you get a gap up and then just straight down all day. Roblox, a gap up, straight down all day. Microsoft, gap up, straight down all day. Continuation, little digestion on the lower half, potentially continuing lower. So hopefully you guys are starting to take notice. Duolingo, huge gap up, not instant failure, but massive failure on a huge pickup in volume going down. And names are either one of two things, like I said last night. They're either gapping up and then getting crushed, or they're just gapping down and getting their asses kicked, right? Look at what they did to Dave. Look at what they did to Sezzle, right? Look at what they did to Lily, right? Look at what they did to speculative TSSI. So you're just kind of getting that everywhere you look, right? You get that push, and then all of a sudden, you're getting whacked, or you're just getting whacked. Yeah, there are names out there that are trying to get those earnings flushes back. Okay. I wouldn't necessarily focus too much on a Boeing because it's a bit slower and it's not in one of the best groups. I would focus more on an AMD trying to do the same, right? Because it's in a better group, right? This thing was already in a really nice trend beforehand, even nicer than Boeing's. You get a pullback, you get a start to get a bounce right back up. Yeah, Toast recovered a bit, but does Toast remind you of any recent name? I can think of one. Oh yeah, TTD brutalized, dude. TTD got absolutely smoked. Clement, can you think of another one that looks a little like what TTD is going to open up like? FTNT. Dude, they are absolutely destroying names out here. So yeah, Toast actually reminds me potentially a little. Now I like Toast, but it reminds me a little bit of RCL, right? Where you're like, oh, it gapped down, but had a pickup in volume and closed pretty decent, and then all of a sudden, right, you're rolling over. All right, I'm not going to say that that's going to happen to Toast. I don't ever know what's going to happen to a name, but I thought I would just point out that this is what is happening to some names. So the two things that I've kind of said recently is be patient on. Yeah, I'm noticing Rocket Lab right now going higher, um, but here's the thing: I'm not looking to buy earnings gap ups on day one in this market. Right? I'm. If you were just listening to me for my last 5 minutes, you'll have noticed that in the market, you've been getting these pushes up on earnings and then failures, right? Like met with instant selling. Not instant, but sometimes the next day, sometimes same day. And I think you just have to wait for continuation setups in the market versus trying to buy the day one gap ups. There's just too much there's too many instances where names are acting like NOW, Duolingo, Microsoft, Roblox, SoFi, NOW, and more, right? And so I don't want to be buying earnings gap ups in this environment. The market has made it pretty crystal clear that you're basically just gambling. Um, you got to wait for continuation setups, whether that be a high volume close setup, a high type flag, something better than trying to guess on the earnings gap up. That's just crazy. But yeah, I saw that it was going up, but you know, it's on my radar, but it's not one that I can buy. I mean, we're just not. And here's the thing: it's not that names aren't reacting well to their earnings. It's just that they're being met by instant selling. So you kind of just have to read the room. For now, the market's telling you don't buy the gap up, right? Too many instances, or a lot of names just getting crushed on the gap down. Again, FTNT, TTD, etc. My thoughts on CCL is that I own it and I'm, waiting to be stopped out. I'm either waiting to be stopped. They have earnings coming up soon. My hope is that they don't act like RCL, but I've already trimmed in this push. I've already trimmed and I've just been holding through this. So yeah, Run's in a shitty group, but I do like the earnings that Run had. Nice earnings, believe it or not. They beat by quite a bit. Thoughts on CIs for breakout? What are CIs? Or you mean CI? That's Cigna? What are CIs? I don't know what the hell that is. What do I think about shorting Roku? It could be shortable. A lot of names, when they're living below their 50 simple moving average like this, you never know how bad something can roll over once you are living below your 50. But again, Duolingo should have taught everybody what something can do when it's living below its 50, right? It breaks below the 50, and then it could roll over some more. I'm hopeful that the 50 simple moving average catches up to CCL so I can hold it. Why? Because it's just been holding in there, building higher lows, right? What's wrong with CCL if it's still holding on to this left side peak? Think about it. When it had this little pullback and held and made a new high, it held that left side peak, right? So long as it can just kind of hold on to that left side peak, I'm all good with it. Let it work. You don't catch big winners by being too impatient. I don't know that I'm taking gains any quote unquote faster in this environment. I'm just being way more selective and clicking the button a whole lot less. And I'm also actively shorting stuff if it allows me to. Yeah, CLS was a nice earnings winner, but still a little too extended. It does have a setup at 202, which we are gapping up over today. Yeah, I like KTOS. Hopefully this one doesn't die. I don't, just still a little bit extended from the 50, but definitely a nice looking name. Not too extended, but a little bit of a failure here. And, another 3, 4, 5 days of chopping around would let the 50 catch up. Yeah, I mean, it's all right. It got its ass kicked quite a bit. So I don't know. I don't really see a setup here for myself. And with earnings coming up, just hang out. Yeah, some semis been acting a bit better than others. Yeah, some semis are definitely acting better than others. Some like ASML look horrible. ASML, obviously we know what SMCI is doing, although they're not really a semi company. They're more like they make furniture. Yeah, some are acting better. Yeah, I don't know that we get it. I mean, eventually we get a 10% correction in the market. I just don't know when. Right? We can keep correcting through price, through chop, and the key is, in my opinion, is that the market needs stocks that can move the market, have clean bases in order for them to go higher. Right? At this point, we are still quite extended on a bunch of names. And there's just not enough clean material out there to okay, I bought Hood yesterday, right? After a humongous move up, right? All it really did through this period here was go sideways. Right? This is kind of at least 3 weeks is what I'm looking for, at least the market to do, minimum. Individual stocks could do that. That would be lovely too. And again, this has been a leading name. So it started to build a series of higher lows, right? Here's your low, here's a higher low, here's a higher low. So it started to build a series of higher lows on the daily. And then it got really tight above all key moving averages right before it took off. So, yeah, that's how I was kind of viewing Hood yesterday as a prior leader that just tightened up. Ideally, we get more and more charts that do that, right? And ideally, we get more charts that don't get killed on earnings so we can actually have more material. No, not really. The fact that it gapped up yesterday was just speaking to the subtleties of how strong that name actually is. Yeah, ASTS is kind of in no man's land right now. Plus, it got really hit yesterday. right? It got really hit yesterday. So, we're still hanging out above the 50, and it could still be that this ends up playing out as a higher low, right? We just don't know, right? Like this bar here could be a lot like the bar on 7-9. Maybe Rocket Lab helps it have an inside day, and then Monday it starts to, turn back up, Tuesday, Wednesday, something like that. Yeah, Google looks good, but it's just so slow. But yes, it looks pretty fantastic, all things considered. What do I think of GVA? Well, let's take a peek. Not that fast. Yeah, really nice reaction to earnings. Cup, kind of a handle here. Sloppy, but not the most liquid, not the fastest. Because it only trades $50 million and trades sub 3% per day in terms of average daily range, I would leave it alone. If it were this slow but traded $530 million a day, then I would think a little differently of it. But because it's kind of illiquid, like even I couldn't size it up to make up for how slow it is. And so it's a little slow and it's a little illiquid. Like I said, if it traded $500 million, then you could put $2 million in there, and then just 3 million, 4 million if you've got a bunch of capital just kind of sitting around, and then it can actually pay you with how slow it really moves. But otherwise, it's a little too slow. Can I walk through my VRM short? Yeah, when Carvana was having what I thought was a blow off move to 60, which was way back here, I thought this was getting a little out of hand. And in like after hours, I think one of these days, I can't remember when, it was having like this blow off move towards $60. And I thought to myself, like, the only reason VRM is running is in sympathy to Carvana. So I shorted VRM. And then this had an 80-1 split, so you can't really look at this price. But I started to short in this consolidation here. I saw this kind of nasty breakdown, and then I was using this left side peak to get myself situated in it. And I had like, I don't know, I think it was like, I don't remember what the hell I had. I ended up, after the 80-1 split, I had like, I don't know, 3,500 shares or something like that, if I'm not mistaken. So, and I held for 12 months. It's like an 800K winner, roughly. GGLL is 2x Google. Yeah, it was a while ago, that VRM. I almost wanted to get buy myself a car and then get the license plate VRM on it just for shits and giggles, but I didn't. GGLL. Yeah, this looks, obviously just like Google. Yeah, not bad. I don't mess with super small names like PSTV. What's my take on Trump signing the executive order to include Bitcoin in retirement accounts? Well, it's not just Bitcoin, dude. So, there's something to celebrate. We can also put fart coin in our 401ks too. Yeah, I'm hopeful. Yeah, I would love to see Tesla go higher so I can get myself in that name. Morning, Turquito. Thoughts on KRMN? They're in the right group. Aerospace and defense, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, she can put Farcoin in her 401k. It's on now, guys. It's we've been waiting for moments like this. It's what dreams are made of. PL. Yeah, it's getting tighter. After a nice move up, it's tightening up. God, it's just so illiquid, man. So many of these names just trade such small volume. It's crazy. I mean, for a lot of people, 40, 50 million is more than enough. I just can't do anything with that, unfortunately. This Meta flagging out here pretty nicely after earnings too. Yeah, Google as well. Very impressive AVGO. MBIS is another interesting one. Huge volume came into this thing yesterday and a really nice consolidation. Met Coal. Yeah, this is going to be trying to run with MP. Pretty shitty earnings for Met Coal, but doesn't seem to matter. When the theme is hot, the theme is hot. Don't know that I see myself buying this one, but how do I find the right group? Well, one, when you do your homework and you're scanning at night and you're like looking through a bunch of charts, right? Like as I'm looking just through my scan and I'm finding, and you see me going through, some names, and a name like Google will be on there. What I want to start to notice is, do these names have anything in common? Right? So that just naturally, without actually going to FinViz or, Deep View or, TC2000 or wherever you actually have scans built, which, I'm just looking through my regular TOS scan that I built for a 90-day relative strength. When I'm looking through that, I'm asking myself, do any of the names that I'm looking at have something in common? Right? And then I also think to myself, do any of these have really clean bases? And then what I start to say is, if they have something in common, well, what is it? Right? And then that's kind of how I start to differentiate what groups things are in, what groups are the strongest. If I start to notice a bunch of names breaking down, I then say to myself, oh, okay, are they in a particular group? Maybe home builders, maybe drug manufacturers, maybe healthcare names, whatever. And then if I see a bunch of nice bases like I did Brittany on gold on Monday, that's why on August 1st I tweeted, nicest base in the market is gold. A few days later on Monday, which was the 4th, right, I was staring right at wheat and precious metal. At the time, I didn't buy it because it just wasn't trading enough volume for me at the time for me to buy it. But of course, had I bought it, I'd be up, $7-8 a share. Very nice chart. And it wasn't just the only one. It was WPM, it was AEM, it was NEM, it was KGC, it was, these are huge moves, guys, for the gold miners. It was GFI, huge moves. And they all had nice clean bases, all of them. And your job is to recognize that. And so that's why I was watching one of them. My mistake was not getting myself positioned and sprinkling risk amongst a few of them, which is what I should have done. And again, that's hindsight's 2020. I will get better from that and not make the mistake, of just, I can just size it down and then, take 2 or 3 of them and then kind of get the dollar amount that I wanted in the group, which is something that I'll do in the future. But yeah, that's the job. It's just done through scanning. And then the next thing you can do is, well, 1, build scanners. 2, use FinViz to your advantage. Literally look at industry groups and take it from there.
On MDCD powers off with patent pending AI tech auction expansion.
Yeah, I've shared my scans on Discord before. Can I talk about PGY Upstart Group? Oh yeah, okay. That's exactly what's been going on. A lot of names, Christine, have been doing exactly that. They've been gapping up and they've been selling off. Right? That's it. It's more environment than it is, something against those names. Like Upstart sold off pretty hard, but Groupon, just like the other ones, right, gave a gap up and then a fail. gap up, not really a fail because it technically finished green on the day, but a gap up and then all day sell off. Very similar to the other ones that you've seen. Very similar to the others. PGY, same deal, right? And also, this is not enough consolidation for a gap up like this. It's up 200+ % when you go to buy it. I don't know if gold bars, tariff news, and whatever else is a tailwind. People forget, like when I was talking about gold last year in March. Why was I talking about gold last year in March? It had over a decade-long cup and handle, guys, and I said so on Twitter. You guys, people just look for narratives, except price had just consolidated for a decade and now breaking out. Those breakouts don't resolve in 3 months. Sometimes they resolve over 3 years, maybe longer. Who knows? And so I think narrative just tends to follow price, but price is the thing that leads. And you get like, it was crazy because I remember when I bought gold, it was on leap year. Was it leap year? I think it was leap year, or even March 1st of 2024. And you could look, it was right in here. Yeah, it was leap year, the 29th. That's right. So, and then the first, it really rocketed out. And if you look in here, we had a huge base. I'll pull it up. Go back even further. And maybe we go zoom out even further. This is a decade long. Can I really zoom in on this thing? How do I zoom some more? Not sure. But effectively, if you zoom even further back out on the chart, you'll know it was a decade-long cup and handle. And that's exactly what, would give you the impression that, this breakout's probably got a whole lot more juice in it. But now as we kind of get up here, personally, I think this is kind of like the last consolidation before, we start to pull back, and then, gold will fail a little bit from there, would be my expectation. And then in that scenario, I would also expect the dollar to start to go back up. No, there are no decade long. You have to have massive corrections. So Microsoft might be a really good example after the dot-com boom, right? And then they were stagnant for like 14 years. Yeah, I think about companies' earnings, but I don't. So, like, this is all I really care about. Does the company have accelerating earnings and sales? Right? That's what matters to me. Are they in a good group? But what matters the most is, what is the reaction that they're getting from those earnings? If the reaction is we get TTD'd, and by the way, their earnings weren't terrible, right? But look at what's happening to it. So at this point, I'm done evaluating. I don't give a shit what the earnings were. I don't care how I feel about those earnings. What I know for a fact is I'm not buying TTD, right? I'm not going to evaluate it. I'm going to look at this price action and I'm running in the opposite direction. So I'm not here to evaluate TTD's earnings when you get killed like this, because the people who can move the stock clearly don't want to own it. So my job is to, and if I think earnings sucked, but the stock gapped up and is being consolidating after a gap up, I pay attention to that, right? Because my opinion doesn't really matter. The only opinion that matters is that of the markets. And if they're trying to take a stock higher, and they're in a good group, my job is to recognize that and try and get involved. My job isn't to be like, oh my God, TTD's earnings were so good. This is an overreaction. I'm going to buy some. Well, then you end up just owning shit and a bunch of shit that ain't even going higher. Do I trade differently on Fridays compared to other days of the week? Nope. I mean, maybe if it's crypto related, because you can't really manage risk over the weekend. But no, not really. My job is to buy a setup that I understand, and then, if I have cushion on it going into the weekend, I just hold it. Yeah, I don't add more setups to the playbook. Like I don't study more setups. I don't need them, to be honest with you. I already have 6 or 7 different ways I can get myself involved into any single stock. So I've got more than enough. I think I need to have less reasons to enter stuff instead of more, right? Because then if you have like more ways to enter, you'll find reasons to click the button and do too much. And I don't want to do too much. I want to do less. Robert, if you watch my last night's watch list video, you should know how I feel about any stocks on day one of their earnings in this environment. And I'll repeat it just for everybody who has shown up late. I do not want to buy any gap ups in this market on day one for their earnings. There's far too many examples of names getting their asses kicked immediately after gapping up on day one. Maybe Rocket Lab's the exception to the rule, but if you looked at PGY, Groupon, if you looked at Duolingo, if you looked at NOW, if you looked at SoFi, if you looked at Roblox, if you looked at Microsoft, if you looked at, dude, there's just too many examples of stocks gapping up, right? And then failing almost immediately. So that's enough evidence that I don't need to be clicking the button all day long. The less I do, the better. Well, exits the same as always. I just trail ascending moving averages. Entries are just, you get a gap up, right? A bunch of people get involved on the earnings gap up because earnings were perceived as pretty good. And then it gives you a closing price. And then you're operating your entries around said closing price. Yeah, that's one of the ways I get involved is high volume closes. You also have earnings gap ups. You also have flat base breakouts. You also have high type flags. You have undercut and rallies. You have moving average undercut and rallies. You have a lot. You've got, that's quite a few ways that you can get involved into names. More than enough. You have support gaps. How long am I usually in a trade? As long as they let me be in it. I've been in CCL since, I don't know, what day was this? 6/26. So a month and a half. I've been in ARC since 6/6. So over 2 months. I've been in Oklo since 7/14, so almost a month. I've been in Hood for a day. I've been short SoFi since 7/29. So yeah, I don't really decide how long I'm going to be in a trade for. The stock decides how long I'm going to be in the trade for. FSLR looks good, but the group acts like shit. Outside of Run and First Solar, they need to keep acting better. Otherwise, and again, you haven't missed anything. Do you see this 200-day? See the slope of it, how it's going down, and it's maybe, just maybe, starting to flatten. The biggest moves occur when the 200 is going up, not down. Oh, cool, dude. You're watching from Chile? Hell yeah. Happy to help, man. Happy to help. I use a 5 minute chart to take my entries. So undercut and rallies, you'll get the daily price will undercut a key daily level. And then on your 5 minute chart, you'll get what's called a 620 setup. And then, it starts to rally back through. And that'll be like my entry. And then I'll use that prior low as my stop. Did I ever doubt myself when starting out trading? No. No, man, I started making money right away, dude. I got very lucky that I started trading in such an insanely hot environment that I doubted myself a little bit more in 2022 when the thing that I was doing wasn't really working so well. But instead of, just continuously clicking the button all the time, I started studying, traders with 10 and 20 years of experience. I started studying the other side of the market so I can, learn to short some. And then by the time, my studies effectively on swing trading, I started to have a little bit better of a foundation. We started going into ends of 2022, which is when I bought Nvidia, and into 2023, and I started to like really start to see some success. What I basically spent, the ends of 21 and almost all of 22 studying, and even in 2022, I started that year off very successfully because I bought oil and gas stocks. So I bought them on January 3rd of 22. So it's like I was already in the XLE and I was pretty stress free. And, I did so well in 20 and 21 that, it kind of allowed me a grace period to just study, kind of pay my market tuition. And then once I did that and stayed open minded and learned my setups and realized it's not about, people think that there's some holy grail technical setup, and there isn't. What's holy grail is the environment you're trading and making sure that the trades that you're taking are aligned with a healthy market, or if you're on the short side, aligned with that side of the market, meaning their market's undergoing some distribution. And I think people use their brains in the wrong way. They'll look at a name like TTD and they'll be like, that shouldn't be down that much. And then they go buying stuff as it's pulling, really getting killed, right? They'll use their brains for the wrong way instead of aligning themselves with, names that are in a good group. Yeah, I'll buy stocks, more than one stock that's in a good group. Yeah. When semiconductors were acting well, yeah. Or when, banking names are acting well, yeah. I don't need to own too many, but yeah, 2 or 3 would be the most from any one individual group. No, I've made all my capital. I started with 30K, and I made all my capital from trading. For anybody here who isn't familiar with my story, there's quite a bit of you in here. I got home from prison in April of 2020. I was there for 18 months for weed. And I was locked up for 18 months, and I effectively got home in April. I funded my TD Ameritrade account in May, and then I started full-time June 1st. And I started out as a scalper, and I just scalped and scalped and scalped and scalped and scalped. And by the time I got kicked off from TD Ameritrade, which was like in June or July of 2021, I had already made about 3.5 million. So, and it was just me being very aggressive trading sympathy plays. So, and the 30,000 in capital I had from material possessions and just some cash left over from, you know, back in the day. Why I stopped what? I wouldn't suggest anybody start scalping thinking they're going to do as well as I did back in that environment. 2020 and 21, guys, was like the hottest market ever, right? And by the way, scalping is stressful. Imagine thinking you have to imagine scalping hood on breakout day, this day here. Imagine scalping that. And then this is what it did. I don't want to scalp, and I don't recommend anybody scalp, right? Imagine having to come up with a bright idea every single day of your life in order to make a couple dollars, right? The market's just not that hot that you can do that. It's actually been a pretty narrow rally. So, you always want to like just focus on the best group. If you really want to truly make it a 40-year career, day trading's not the way. It's just not, right? If you want to end up making 8-figure trades, even 7-figure trades, very seldomly does a 7-figure day trade come by. But the 8-figure swing trades, if you can work yourself into one, be in the right group, be in the right environment, you're not going to make 8 figures typically on a day trade, right? Again, very seldomly do those come by, maybe once every year or every other year, right? But I'd like to make 8-figure trades and 9-figure trades in the future. And the only way to do that is with swing trading, right? It's not going to come from day trading. So, if you just want to make, 3, 4, $500, scalp, fine. But if you want to not have to come up with a bright idea every single day of your life, then swing trading, much less stressful, much easier to do, you know, it's very easy in my opinion. I mean, because I understand what I understand, but I don't want to day trade. I don't want to day trade shit small cap companies, dude. I mean, some institutions are trading like, 50 million, 60, $70 million names, but the more liquid, the more they're apt to be trading them, right? And they're not really trading them, they're accumulating them. No, I don't trade options, dude. You know who makes money trading options? Nobody. And the people who teach you how to trade options. uh, that's who. Very few people make a super big fortune trading options, dude. Very, very few. No, I mean, again, yes, he probably makes some money trading options, but he'll tell you himself how difficult it is. There are some people that make money trading options, but it's very few who build a career around trading options. Very few. It's very few. In fact, what you end up seeing with most of the furus out there is they open up an options trade on both sides, one contract, and then only show you the percent gain on the one that made money. All right, just throwing that out there for those of you who haven't figured out the games by now that you're being cloaked over your eyes. Oh my God, my 400% gain. Yeah, cool. On your one contract. Fantastic. How's that $65 treating you? How's the $300 treating? It's like, it's a bunch of, and they've got one put, one call, and then they just show you the one that worked for 300%. Yeah, they look at flow, and trust me, I get it. I just don't trade it because it's not really scalable. It's not really scalable. You guys understand, right? When they do like the book, The Market Wizards, it's not a bunch of day traders or options traders there, right? Very, very few, right? Maybe some guys have an options playbook, and we'll take a couple options every now and again, but there aren't options, dude. There aren't options in Market Wizards, like just strictly trading options, or right. The best traders in the world, they trade shares. Guys, appreciate you guys as always. I hope you guys have an awesome weekend. I hope you guys have an awesome weekend. I got to get going. We will see you guys on Monday. Don't do anything crazy. Don't ruin your weekends by doing anything crazy, right? Don't be chasing earnings gap ups today. Market's still just chopping around. Just remember that the best stocks are bought after a market correction that have been showing the most relative strength. So just be patient. I'll see you guys on Monday.